This is Mondays with Vish. I'm Grant Cohn. That's Vish Kumaran. If you've never watched us before, we basically just talk about the Niners and football for an hour. We have a few general topics we want to hit, but it's just the conversation we would be having over the phone if we weren't doing it here. And if you guys want to interrupt us and you have any questions, you feel like we're getting off topic, we're not hitting the stuff you want us to hit, feel free to ask a question anytime and we will take it. So with that little introduction, Vish, how you doing? Thanks for coming on.
I'm doing well. How are you? Crazy
I'm
weekend,
doing crazy weekend. Why don't we just start with the Super Bowl? What did you think? I haven't really talked to you since then. What did you think of the Super Bowl?
Oh, I thought it was really interesting. I actually picked the Kansas City Chiefs. We did a pregame show, Blake and I, 2 hours before the game. Subscribe to us, Blake and Vish Sports. But we did a pregame show, and I picked the Chiefs, and I picked them solely because I thought that Andy Reid would come up with a game plan in 2 weeks to protect his offensive line. I thought Mahomes is Mahomes. How are you going to stop Kelsey and Mahomes, Kelsey, and Hill? And then I thought Spags would have something really juicy for Tom Brady to think about. And, I was wrong on all fronts with it. It was a really interesting game because I think that's the first time I've looked at in Mahomes' career and said, wow, his team just got outcoached. And I thought that's what happened. Todd Bowles outcoached Andy Reid and Byron Leftwich outcoached Spags. Both of them had game plans that wasn't the exact template that they'd been following the last 18 weeks. It was something a little new, something a little different. And it really worked to the favor of their respective teams. And, you look at what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did, right? And with Tom Brady, they went 45% play action yesterday, which is something that was the highest percentage of their season. And it was really important, right, to get the run established and not put Brady in 3rd and 8 from the shotgun where Spags is showing something crazy and he ends up blitzing and changing into something crazier and Brady's under pressure. And they really protected him and they played with their defense. They played with their run game. They played a very, very, very controlled, fundamentally sound team football game in all three phases. They won with offense, defense, special teams. It was complementary. It was the finest version of complementary football you could find. And that was really cool to see. And, in my opinion, I actually thought Patrick Mahomes played a phenomenal game.
I thought he did too.
I thought he played outstanding. I don't think there's any other quarterback that could have made the number of plays that he made yesterday in the circumstances. Right. How many drops were there that were just incredible plays where, he drops back. First read is not open. Shaq Barrett, JPP, Ndamukong Suh in his face, runs back 5 yards, runs away from them, then turns around and flicks off platform with barely any body weight, taking a half a look at the guy, a laser that hits the guy in the face mask or hits the guy in the hands or is as accurate a ball as you can get. And, Kelsey dropped a big one on a 3rd down. Hill dropped the one early that could have been a touchdown. That was ridiculous. And then, of course, Darrell Williams dropped the touchdown. So,
okay. So hold on. That's very interesting, your thoughts on the Chiefs. And I understand that you're focused on the Chiefs because you picked them. Now, I picked the Bucs. And so my takeaways from the game are more centered on Tampa because as I'm watching it, I'm like, see. So let me just run by you what I was thinking. I mean, what struck me about Tampa's performance, certainly on defense, it was phenomenal. We've talked about Todd Bowles. He's phenomenal. That Vita Vea player is phenomenal. Devin White and Levante David in the middle are the closest tandem we've seen to Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman. It's a terrific team. That being said, it was 7-9 last year. And when Brady got there this year, very few people considered Tampa just the Super Bowl favorite. I mean, there were a lot of reasons why not to. No offseason. They didn't have a lot of time to gel. The fact that they brought in Brady brought in himself, but not just him. It was this collection of kind of misfits that he brought with him. No one wanted Leonard Fournette. That guy cleared waivers. No one wanted Antonio Brown. He was toxic. And Rob Gronkowski only would have came out of retirement for one guy. So he brought this crew with him. And they all played really well in this game. I mean, Fournette scored, didn't he? Am I tripping?
Yeah, Fournette
scored.
Had a touchdown run, yeah.
Gronkowski scored. Did Antonio Brown score?
Yeah.
Yeah, so everyone
incredible route on Tyrann Mathieu.
Right, like so everyone that Tom Brady basically brought back from the dead performed. And these players like Fournette Antonio Brown in particular were considered like bad eggs, like guys who would rip apart your team. You never heard anything with these guys all season when Brady was the quarterback. So it was interesting to see. I think it's like we've talked about like what makes a quarterback the best. He's not the most skilled quarterback of all time. He's probably not even the top 10 most skilled quarterback of all time, but he is the best quarterback of all time. And it's all this intangible stuff. And it was on display last night, the way that he can hold Antonio Brown accountable, the way he can hold Leonard Fournette accountable, the way that he can raise the level of professionalism of everyone on the team. It was very impressive to see it play out. And what I think is you're seeing from Brady is he's a lot like LeBron in the sense that LeBron can take his act to any team and basically get them into title contention within a year or two. That's just any team. And I think Brady's the same way too. It's remarkable. It's just remarkable.
Do you think he also ended world hunger and cured COVID-19 while he was at it this year?
I don't think that's overstated, man. I really feel that what Tom Brady did this year and in this game is the top accomplishment of his career, which is the most accomplished career of all time.
Absolutely. That cannot be minimized. And you definitely deserve credit because you picked them in August, right?
I did.
I did. You 100% deserve credit for that. Definitely props to you for that. What I will say is that I do think from the standpoint of the accountability and all of that, there's no way to quantify that. And what Tom Brady pulled off, 40 touchdowns at the age of 43, pushing the ball down the field the way he did, the throws he's still making at 43, all of those things should not be understated. This is one of the great seasons in NFL history for a 43-year-old quarterback. Like it's unprecedented for him to even be playing at half this level at 43, and he's still playing at like a top 10 type quarterback. So what he's doing is phenomenal. For me, the one thing I will say is I think his contributions within this playoff run, especially the last two games, have been a little overstated from the standpoint of yesterday they won with their defense. What their defense did was phenomenal. And I think something that went under the radar is you brought up Vita Vea in the beginning. I think you called him Vita Vea.
Sorry.
But Vita Vea, no, I'm just messing with you. But
I did call him Vita Vea.
Yeah, I'm just messing with you. But Vita Vea in the beginning, when he played this season, by DVOA, it's the top analytics metrics. If you remember, before he got hurt in the Green Bay game, people were like, wow, this Bucs team is historic in terms of their DVOA. Wow, we didn't expect their defense to be that good. And it was because he was playing, and then he got hurt, and the defense fell off, and everybody was like, oh, see, the Bucs don't have a defense, blah, blah, blah. He came back last week for Green Bay. I don't know how a 345-pound man comes back from a broken ankle and plays the game the way he did. But he did come back and played like that the last 2 weeks, and he dominated. And when he plays, the Bucs had by far the best defense in the NFL because they have speed at all three levels. They're extremely sound when it comes to tackling. Todd Bowles is a phenomenal defensive coordinator, and they can rush the passer. Their front four, to me, was underrated because they didn't play a lot of time together. But when you add, as Cam Newton calls him, Donkey Kong Sue, Dominating Sue, and Ndamukong Suh, who's maybe a Hall of Fame level player, 5-time first-team All-Pro, Vita Vea, who's a top 13 pick and is a phenomenal football player, Shaq Barrett, who led the NFL in sacks last year, and Jason Pierre-Paul, who also might have a Hall of Fame argument when it's all said and done. When you have that front four with two elite linebackers.
No, I'm just saying this defense was in place last year, and they were 7-9.
And they had a great defense for 30 interceptions.
But the quarterback matters.
They're still a top 10 defense.
It's a hell of a defense.
So what I'm saying is, my point is that it's not like I think that another quarterback who was better than Jameis Winston could have gone to the playoffs with this same Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. I think that
Matthew Stafford would have won the Super Bowl with the Bucs this year.
I don't know that, but I think Matthew Stafford, this would be the best defense he's ever played with. I think Bruce Arians would be the best play calling fit for him in terms of his talent and skill set.
Okay, so the last point I want to make about Brady, and this is why I want to tie it back to the Niners. The intangible thing that he brings is like what Peyton brings. They take over the team. It's their team. They're the head coach of the team. If Bruce Arians were to retire tomorrow, who cares? You could just make Todd Bowles the head coach. Nothing would change. It's Tom Brady's team. The way that Peyton Manning's teams were always his team. He's the number one voice. He's basically leading the practices and the meetings and holding everyone accountable. And Peyton was great at that. It was part of what made him Peyton. Brady's better at it. And we're seeing it. Peyton was great. Brady's even better at it. And it's amazing to see him do it on another team. Peyton did it on another team too, but Peyton was dragging a little bit at that point. Brady still looks as good as he's ever looked.
Maybe.
I mean, it's not like he still throws the ball.
No, he's still slinging it. Like, I don't want to come across as if I'm trying to minimize what Tom Brady has achieved, because this is the greatest career maybe in all of sports. What he's done is just phenomenal. I mean, this season is as good a season. I think it actually, I thought it was underrated from the standpoint that people didn't realize that this was a 43-year-old quarterback throwing for 40-plus touchdowns and playing like a top 10 quarterback and still making all the high-level throws he was making. So I don't want to minimize that at all. What I do want to say is that I rather than saying that Tom Brady's contributions are getting overstated, I do want to say that defense, Todd Bowles, Byron Leftwich, their contributions are getting understated. And that's the point I want to drive home.
Let's give them their props, because Bowles is phenomenal. Bowles is phenomenal. He is, as a coordinator, I got to say he's every bit as good as Robert Saleh. And I hold Saleh in the highest regard. So that's how much I think of Bowles. He's up there with Fangio and Saleh.
If you remember last season, do you remember who gave the Niners run game the most trouble throughout the entire season?
Who was
Todd Bowles week 1. Todd Bowles week 1.
That's true.
They couldn't run the football, and Jimmy was really bad in that game, and their offense wouldn't have scored if it wasn't for Jameis Winston giving the ball away. They were struggling.
Okay, so before we move on, I don't want to minimize what Leftwich and this excellent coaching staff on defense did, the entire defense. All I want to say is, and I know it is overstated because everyone talks about Brady, it's just cool to see another example of what he does well. It's great it's fun to watch greatness.
Absolutely.
And it was just really fun to, even though that game was a straight up stinker. And all I want to say is, from the Niners perspective, one of the reasons he's not on the Niners is because of how he takes over. You know what I'm saying? The head coach has to be okay with that. And what we're learning is, it takes us a particular type of head coach to give up control, and Kyle wasn't there. Arians was. Maybe it takes that type of wisdom, that type of.
The one more thing I do want to say about Brady, just in regards to that and taking over, and the other thing is that it's like with his contributions, I do want to mention, like you mentioned, the intangible thing. I don't know how to quantify that. What I will say is that I don't think we've ever seen a greater athlete at managing an entire locker room. I don't think we've ever seen it. I've never heard one bad word said about Tom Brady.
That's a good way to quantify it.
Yeah, I've never heard one.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, as a leader of a locker room, I've never heard one malcontent come out and say, because in every locker room you're going to get that, where there's one bad apple who will say, I dislike Tom Brady. I've never heard that.
You hear it with Rodgers, you hear it with Wilson, you hear it with Roethlisberger.
I've never heard it. Yeah.
Here's the thing. Look at Antonio Brown. He flipped out on Roethlisberger. He went to the Raiders and gave Derek Carr zero respect. He burnt his feet in a cryogenic chamber, and then he refused to play because his helmet wasn't right. Not a peep from him in Tampa because of Tom Brady. That's quantifiable. That's leadership. I'm telling you, when Tom Brady stands in front of a team and talks, there is no one in the football world, player or coach, who demands as much respect. Period. Am I wrong? Pete Carroll doesn't.
Bill Belichick.
Maybe, but maybe not. I'm saying those two would be the tops. Bill Belichick and Tom. And I swear the people in New England are probably like, hey, Bill, did you maybe give up on Tom a little too soon? I mean, maybe if you had a viable replacement, but Cam looks like he's done. So I'm starting it's my show, so you don't have to say this or agree with me, but I'm starting to feel like Bill Belichick is and was a fraud. Good coordinator, took way too much credit for what happened in New England, and is never going to replicate that success again. His next few years are going to resemble much more what happened in Cleveland in the 90s to the previous 20 years. You don't have to agree with me, and you can take me to pieces. But I'm just saying, I'm taking the liberty on my show to say that right now. What is this? This is February 8th, 2:49 p.m. Bill Belichick, a fraud. Bill, if you're watching, you can come see me. Fish, should we move on and talk about Josh Rosen? Hold on.
Do you want to put him on the hot seat real quick?
49ers First Take says, what do you think of LeCanfor report, the Niners' interest in Watson and Darnold? To me, it's non-news. The Niners only want players who fall in their lap it always feels like LaCamfora is the last dude who reports the thing that everyone already knows. And it's like, okay. And when he says it, it's like, oh, now I don't know. Should we talk about Rosen before we talk about Darnold, or should we talk about Darnold?
Sure, we can go in whatever order. I think you had one more question too. I think we might have missed it.
From K. If you would trade 2 first, 2 seconds, and Bosa for Watson, would you for Trevor? Would you trade all that stuff for Trevor Lawrence, is what he's saying.
Sure, why not? Trevor Lawrence is every bit as good as they say. I just think that's like a little. I don't think that would happen. So it's tough to talk about such a hypothetical, I guess.
It's a fun hypothetical because in my Moneyball mentality, this appeals to me more than the Watson move.
Yeah, because he's cheap for 4 years.
Yes. So Kevin, it's kind of brilliant. I don't know. No one's brought that up. Let's think about it. Can John Lynch get Trent Baalke on the phone and make him an offer he can't? I don't know. I don't
think there is an offer. I don't think there is an offer for this one.
What else we got? Yeah, the one about LaCamfora, we're going to get to that in a second. Last one, you said, be right back, got to drop him a Mahomes. Nice. All right.
I mean, there's a lot of gratuitous shots going at Patrick Mahomes. I don't know which game you saw if you thought he played poorly. I don't know.
We're going to talk more about the Chiefs and Andy Reid in a minute. I want to talk Niners for a while. I've been pushing Rosen as a topic the last week. I had an epiphany. I've been watching him, and I don't know what brought me on to watch him. And I've been watching a lot of Kellen Mond and Kyle Trask, and I'm like, oh wait, this guy was definitely the 10th pick for a reason. I mean, you can see it. You can see it all the time. And my question is, what do you think of Josh Rosen? I've never really talked to you about him. What do you think of him coming out? And what do you think of the fact that the NFL just totally turned their back on him in a way that they haven't and won't for Sam Darnold, who has been linked to Rosen forever? I mean, they played in the same city. They were in the same draft class, all that.
All right. Full disclosure, huge Josh Rosen fan, was a huge Josh Rosen fan before he came out of college. Okay, so I might not have all objectivity here, though I've grown to get more objective with the Josh Rosen situation, because sometimes reality just slaps you in the face. And as much as you want Josh Rosen to be what I thought he was going to be, he's not. And, and to just touch on the Darnold conversation really quick, Darnold is more physically gifted than him. I was wrong because I thought Rosen was better than Darnold. So
in what sense is he more physically gifted?
He just moves much better, and that movement is so important.
Yeah. His legs, yes, but not his arm.
So here's my thoughts. No, I don't think he has a bigger arm than Rosen. No. Though I think he has better arm flexibility than Rosen, more platforms. But
fair.
Rosen is really old school from the sense that he's a really old school pocket passer with great feet, great release, great pocket movement. Kind of, he always stays on platform to throw, and he's got a beautiful throwing motion. Always throws spirals, throws with a ton of touch and accuracy. Has a good deep ball. He's really old school, and I think that's why people compared him to Matt Ryan and Eli Manning coming out, and I think he's actually more of a natural thrower than Matt Ryan. I think Eli is probably the best comp in terms of his throwing, but.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in Josh Rosen. I thought his first game, if you go back and watch it, his first ever start for Arizona against Seattle, it's been all downhill in his career since then. But that first start, he looked like a guy who could be a franchise quarterback. He played outstanding in that game. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to go back and watch it, but there were a couple throws to Ricky Seals-Jones, one on a 7 route on a corner, and one that was a seam ball that maybe the top 12, top 13 guys in the NFL make those type throws. It was really special. So he looked awesome then, and it's been all downhill since then. And I like the idea that you threw out. I like the idea that he was taken 10th overall 3 years ago, and the question with him has always been, I think the last time he was brought up, we talked about how there was a report when he came out of Arizona. Some writer wrote a story about how Josh Rosen was already talking about going back to UCLA and studying physics or studying astrophysics. And people that turned people off because they weren't sure about his commitment. I don't know how you can question his commitment at this point, because he's a 10th overall pick who comes from money, and he's endured sitting in a practice squad in Tampa Bay. Then he took the job, got on a flight to San Francisco to be CJ Beathard's backup and not take a snap for 2 games. And
it seems like he's answering every question that they have.
Right.
I mean, you say I'm this, watch. Watch how committed I am. Yeah.
Right. He seems to be totally committed. And if there's one offense that he could work in, this is the offense. This is the only offense in the NFL that suits his skill set, because when you don't move that well in today's NFL, you can't play shotgun, spread it out, spread offense. You got to be in an
and that's what they had him in Miami in particular. But can I say something real quick? When they say he can't move, I mean, he's not Sam Darnold, but he's not Jimmy G either. He's not post ACL Jimmy G. When I watch him, he actually moves okay. He's not Aaron Rodgers, but he's not straight up Phillip Rivers either. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say.
No, he's not totally immobile. I think the thing with Josh Rosen is that even though he didn't run a slow 40, and athletically he's not slow per se, but he doesn't offer much in terms of, okay, the play's not there, let me run out and throw a ball because there's nothing here and run outside of the pocket.
That's not his game.
He's not trained to play that way, and he can't do that. And
he's more like Kirk Cousins.
Right, and I think that it's his journey would be unprecedented at this point if he actually becomes a starter, and if he's anything but a bust or a career backup. But I do think there's enough there where if Kyle Shanahan likes him, he's supposed to be really smart, so he should be able to digest this offense. I don't see why not. What's the harm in keeping him on as a backup? At least you have a highly talented player backing up whoever's the starter next year.
I mean, he's like Mac Jones is going to be 23 in September.
He's 23.
You know, like Josh Rosen's 23 now. I mean, yeah, it didn't go so well from early on. It didn't go well for Steve Young early on. This guy was on terrible teams. He was on terrible team in college. It'd be kind of interesting to see if like he makes his team as a backup and he gets an opportunity to play midseason because Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt and plays well. How quickly would the narrative change around? Would the perception of him change?
Yeah,
like,
of course.
Oh, well, maybe he wasn't on a good team.
Of course, because
my question to you is, why have people given up on him? Is it his personality?
I have no clue. It really beats me. It really beats me because when you see a guy throw the ball the way he throws it, usually those guys, like he's pure. He's pure. He's like Carson Palmer. It's so pure when he throws the ball. So when you throw the ball that pure, it's usually people give you chances just because you can throw the ball like that. And Arizona didn't work out, and taking Kyler Murray was 100% the right decision for them. But when he went to Miami, right? It felt like Miami, it was just, okay, if he shows us something exceptional, then we got something. But we're not really committed to him.
We're not even committed to him.
Right. And, okay, yeah, he didn't beat out Ryan Fitzpatrick and all of that. And Chad O'Shea runs the New England offense, which is documented to take a long time for quarterbacks to digest because the verbiage is different. Well, Tua didn't really beat out Ryan Fitzpatrick this year. It just pays to be the number 5 overall pick that the franchise is trying to boost up, so a lot of roll him out and dump it off here, roll him out, dump it off here. Josh Rosen didn't get as many of those easy completions, and I'm not going to sit here and mince words. Josh Rosen also played terrible in Miami. Yeah, he played a lot worse than Ryan Fitzpatrick. But just because he played that terrible and everything doesn't mean that you just totally give up on the guy. Maybe there's something there, and I think that it's in Kyle Shanahan's best interest to at least keep him on as a third-string quarterback if he's constantly working and improving, and see if you can get something out of him, because he's probably, in terms of just gifts right now, I think he might be the most gifted quarterback on this team, even more than Jimmy.
You don't have to say might. He is the most physically gifted. I'll say it. He is the most physically gifted quarterback on the team, and it's evident right away when you watch the film. Now, as we've pointed out, not everything with quarterbacks is your skill set. I mean, look at Brady. Some of it, there's other things. There's leadership, there's smarts, and I think the deal with Rosen, if we're being honest, is his personality. It's pretty clear that teams have looked at him as being weird. That's the word. Like, he's a little too, I don't know, like he's not the classic NFL franchise quarterback personality. He's not that classic CEO type. He's a little bit too much of a free thinker. He's a little bit too opinionated. He's a little bit too Jewish. I mean, he's just not, he doesn't look the part. And he may not play well in an NFL locker room. Maybe he doesn't have a bunch of people pulling for him the way Jimmy G does.
Maybe.
You know what I'm saying? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe he just doesn't relate well to teammates. Who knows what it is?
Nobody knows. It's a total mystery, and we haven't gotten that bombshell, right? I thought after Arizona moved off him, we would get a bombshell on why they didn't like Josh Rosen, why they traded him. We didn't get that. We just got a couple reports saying, he talked about astrophysics. They're not 100% sure, but ultimately Cliff just wanted Kyler. That was it. Then Miami,
Andrew Luck talk about stuff like that though.
Yeah. So and Miami, you didn't really get that either. So I have no clue what the Josh Rosen story is. But as a Josh Rosen fan, when he was in college, like I hope it works out for him. And if it's gonna work out, this is the place. And if it doesn't work out here, then that's it. That's all she wrote for Josh Rosen's career.
That's right. This is the best. This is a great opportunity for him, and I think he's taking it seriously. I'd like to see the Niners take him seriously as well. And the fact that they just signed him, they made it official today, is a good sign. And it's another indication that they watch our show. Good choice, good taste.
And one more thing, even though he played terrible in Miami, if you actually want to go back and chart him play by play, there are a few deep balls in there that are really, really, really beautiful throws that he makes. I think he made 2 to Preston Williams. I think the Dallas game, he made 3 or 4 that 2 were dropped, I want to say. They dropped
the whole
a
game
couple
against
straight
the
down
Chargers,
the sideline.
he played well. The whole game
the Chargers game was his best game of the season prior. But ultimately, we'll see. I'm hoping. I'm pulling for Josh Rosen.
3 years older than you. I would be very interested to see. All right, we got a lot of very generous donations and questions. Let's hit them, and we'll come back to our stuff. We're going to hit Darnold after we take these questions. Hunter, $50. Thank you, Hunter. Says, watching Mahomes struggle with bad O-line makes you wonder the difficulty Jimmy G was facing this season with no mobility. The Niners defense was solid last year. Bring back Ferret or sign another corner. Our defense is solid, but the O-line and build the O-line in the draft. Hunter, this is a wonderful question. It actually predicts a topic we were going to go over. So why don't we just bring it up now? And we'll come back to Darnold. But it was the topic after that, the importance of the offensive line. And Vish and I were talking about it on the phone. Last night's game was a bit of an extreme example. I mean, both tackles were out, both a guard was out, but still, the Chiefs were favorites. The Chiefs were favored. You picked the Chiefs. Oh, and I'm just saying, a lot of people knew this and still said, you know what, Mahomes is going to find a way. And he couldn't. And it's not that he played poorly. He's great. He made 4 or 5 throws in that game that no one else in the world could make. And they were incomplete. They hit a guy in the face. It was like, okay. The guy ran for 497 yards behind the line of scrimmage, only 9 points. It's not his fault. At a certain level, even the greatest quarterback of all time needs protection. And so, Hunter, I think you got a really good point. The Niners have a very talented young guy. Is bringing in Mac Jones the answer, or is it building the O-line in the draft?
Okay.
What do you think, Vish?
Okay, 100%. I just want to say that, in my opinion, Josh Rosen coming out of college was a better prospect than Trey Lance, Mac Jones, Kyle Trask, all 100% for sure. And that's just my opinion. That's just my take on it. And just if you look at them as players coming out of college, I think he was a better player. I think Lance maybe could have been better if he had more starts, but Rosen started 3 years essentially. So to me, that's why he was the better player, though Lance has the better physical traits because of the movement. So I do want to touch on that. 2, this is not the comparison. This is apples to oranges. They had 4 backup offensive linemen. The San Francisco 49ers never at any point this season had 4 backup offensive linemen that caused their offensive line to play bad. And if you want to go through their starting offensive line, I wouldn't say it's much worse than the 49ers. Mitch Schwartz, Trent Williams, that's a wash, okay? Eric Fisher has a big name because he got a decent contract from the Chiefs and he was drafted first overall. He is a very, very mediocre tackle. Nick Bosa exposed him for 22 pressures in the Super Bowl. Eric Fisher is not that great, okay? Their starting left guard to start this season was Kelechi Osemele. What did Kelechi Osemele do? Kelechi Osemele was signed for a huge contract by the Oakland Raiders. They cut him as a cap casualty. Went to the Jets. The Jets were more than happy to get rid of him, and the Chiefs signed him on the bargain, okay? So all these offensive linemen on the Kansas City Chiefs, it's not like they had 5 All-Pros. They didn't have a great offensive line to begin with. It was an okay one with Andy Reid, who's really good at coaching offensive linemen, and Mitch Schwartz, who was a superstar. And all those guys got hurt, and they were playing 4 undrafted free agents, basically, and Mahomes was running around. This is not the comparison to the 49ers, okay? I think the better way to look at it is look at Tampa Bay's offensive line. They did invest in their offensive line. And they have 4 really, really good players. They were missing their right guard, Alex Kappa, but Ali Marpet is a all-pro level player. Ryan Jensen is a good center. Tristan Wirfs played like an all-pro as a rookie, and Donovan Smith is a highly paid left tackle, okay? So I think that's maybe your better argument. Comparing Mahomes and the 49ers situation to this is totally wrong, and it's a wrong way to look at this, in my opinion.
Yeah, but that's not really what he's asking you. I mean, he's asking, do the Niners need to prioritize offensive line first in the draft? That's the question.
Again, it goes back to offensive line. The question to me you should be asking is, should the 49ers change how they look at offensive linemen philosophically? Kyle Shanahan looks Sage Rosen. Don't hear it from me. Hear it from Sage Rosenthal, who played for him. He went on Matt Mayoko's podcast, and he said it. So even though I've been saying it, I think that he's a much more reliable source, so listen to him. They prioritize lighter, quicker offensive linemen for their run game. Those offensive linemen usually struggle in the pass game. So even if you can say they draft an offensive lineman, the offensive lineman that they want to draft might be the same thing as what Mike McGlinchey has been, what Laken Tomlinson has been. These quicker, more athletic offensive linemen that are really solid in this run game that would still struggle in pass protection, okay? If you're going to draft Trent Williams, you're going to have to wait. You're just going to have to trade everything and hope you can draft Penei Sewell because he seems to be that type of prospect. If you're not going to get
on
that,
Tristan Wirfs. That guy fit.
Sure. And
he's big and fast.
What I agreed, and what I will say is, one, I was wrong about Tristan Wirfs before the draft. I thought that he would be the worst of the 4 tackles. He was the best this year. So one, I was wrong about that. And two, we still don't know how he would function as a left tackle. And he did get lucky because he played with the greatest stepper-upper in the pocket. So when you got a guy that steps up in the pocket as well as Tom Brady, if you let the line go,
if you Wirfs.
Sure.
In 2020, they could have both of them. They could have had Wirfs on the right. McGlinchey on at tight end. He's terrific blocking tight end. He's a wonderful block. He's the quintessential move tight end you want. They just got to work on his hands a little bit in his routes.
I don't know. I don't know what to say to
that. Yeah. So Hunter, I guess what Vish is saying is, last night was an extreme example. It was an extreme example, but I still think the point remains that when you look at Seattle, they've been trying that for 5 years. They're like, let's go cheap. We have to cut corners somewhere because we're paying our quarterback so much money. So why don't we cut it at the offensive line and say that this guy is so athletic, we can afford to, and we'll put our money in on the defense. Well, that hasn't worked for Seattle.
But my question is, if you protect Russell Wilson runs into sacks a lot. So you can have the perfect protection. It's not like if you set Russell Wilson up a pocket, he's going to look right, then come back to a second read, step up in the pocket like a classical quarterback. He runs a lot. He runs around a lot. So investing in their offensive linemen, to me, is not fruitful for the Seattle Seahawks. I don't think that's been their problem. I think their problem has been bad draft picks, bad investment of capital because they trade their draft picks for players who have not been worth the investment. And they've paid a lot of players that probably didn't deserve the money. And they've been kind of sticking around because Pete Carroll has a culture. Russell Wilson's a really great quarterback and Bobby Wagner is a hell of a defensive player.
Okay, Hunter, look, I just got to have to disagree with Vish here. I mean, Vish won't go any further than saying that you can't draw any conclusions from the Super Bowl. I drew a conclusion. I feel that what we learned in that Super Bowl yesterday was that quality offensive line can win you a championship. And if you don't have one, you have no chance. And of course, no one's going to go into a season with that offensive line that the Chiefs had last night. But the general point still remains that the bigger weakness on the Niners right now is the offensive line, not the quarterback. And if they just think that bringing in any other quarterback who's not Tom Brady, even Brady, would have insisted on Tristan Wirfs. There's a reason that Tampa took him. He would have insisted on better pass protection. And to think that you can skate by with subpar pass protection, I think is a losing strategy. And if the goal is to win a Super Bowl.
I'm not saying that this offensive line is fantastic, okay? I think quarterback is the bigger need, but I do think offensive line is worth the investment. What I'm saying is my takeaway from the Super Bowl is the question of, do the Niners maybe have to adjust philosophically how they look at offensive linemen? And to me, that's a deeper question.
Do you think they have to?
I'm not sure. I would love to hear Kyle Shanahan's reasoning on why. Because obviously they set up his run game. They set up how he can marry the run and the pass. There's so many positives, and he showed those positives off in 2019. I would love to hear him really go into depth on why he prefers that, because that to me is the deepest question.
I just don't think you can really win a Super Bowl with an offensive tackle like Mike McGlinchey. I mean, to me, he's so run-oriented, and that's great. He's such a classic right tackle from like the 1990s. Right. But in today's NFL, even on the Niners, there's so many open formations where Kittle's out in the slot and there's no one next to McGlinchey and it's a pass and he just isn't built for that. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, it's an interesting case study. It's definitely worth looking into, like types of offensive linemen that won Super Bowls. If you can go and
you mentioned it to me last night. I mean, Tampa's offensive line is just bigger than the Niners' offensive line.
Yeah,
bigger.
I mean, the Niners' offensive line struggled with the size of the Chiefs' defensive line a year ago. This year, Tampa's offensive line just wore him out. And, that won't be seen in the run stats, but you could see with first, the type of runs that they were running were slightly different here and there. And second of all, you could just see how you could see it visually, how Tampa's offensive line just took over that game down the stretch. That entire second half was about them.
Right. And we've talked about how Kyle Shanahan in 2 Super Bowls didn't, just grind out the win with the run. Well, his offense isn't really built to do that. It's built to stretch you out. It's built to get big plays and get you out and get the edge. But that's not what Tampa does. Tampa runs between the tackles with these slam backs who are like 225 pounds. And what's a 2-yard run in the first quarter becomes a 6-yard run in the fourth quarter because it's tiring. It's tiring. It's physical. And the Niners' run game isn't physical. It's finesse in a good way. It's for the big. It's trying to get the big play, and it marries well with play action.
Right, and Tampa's running backs are also suited for that. The Niners' running backs aren't the big grinders.
Although Wilson runs hard, he's like 200 pounds. It's different. Yeah. Okay. Let's get back to Darnold. So you're enthusiastic about Rosen. We've talked about Darnold before, but if people don't know you or haven't watched us before, what do you think about the speculation that the Niners coming from Colin Cowherd, who I don't know,
loves Sam Darnold to no avail.
He loves USC and he loves Sam Darnold. So he said that if the rumors are true, blah 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 blah. Anyway, let's say the rumors are true. What do you think of the Niners potentially being interested in Sam Darnold?
This would be the most disappointing move to me that they would make at quarterback. And it's not that I don't think Sam Darnold's talented. He's shown glimpses of a ton of talent. If you take Sam Darnold's top 10 throws and you put them in a highlight reel, you'll say, wow. But the problem is if you take Sam Darnold's worst 10 throws and put it in a highlight reel, you should say that he's out of the league. And look, if you want more, I will, again, full disclosure, if you want to check my objectivity, you can check it because I did not think Sam Darnold was good before the draft. I thought he was just another overrated, well-spoken, big white quarterback that you see get overdrafted all the time, like the Jake Lockers, the Blaine Gabberts, the Blake Bortles. And look, I was wrong. Sam Darnold's better than all of them. He's not the big, great personality.
No, Zach Wilson has the Josh Rosen personality.
Right.
Honestly.
And okay.
Super rich.
And I do want to mention I was wrong. Sam Darnold is a much better player than all of those players. He's shown glimpses of a lot more talent than any of those 3 guys did. So I was wrong there. What I do want to say is, okay, so people bring up Adam Gase, right? And Rich Madrid on Twitter did a phenomenal job on his burner account charting, putting up a little film thread of Sam Darnold and pointing out how Adam Gase's offense is not suited for his athleticism. And I get that. And that's why Joe Flacco was a much better player in this offense last year than Sam Darnold was. But even within the offense, you can evaluate what Sam Darnold did. And Sam Darnold wasn't always the best post-snap of knowing where to go with the ball. He often looked lost on where to go with the ball. He was inaccurate at times. So there was a lot of ugly with Sam Darnold.
He doesn't execute an offense well.
And so there was a lot of ugly that was there. And you can say, well, Shanahan's going to help with those things. And I agree. But my biggest question with Sam Darnold is the fact that you got to make a contract decision on him this year. And I don't think he's shown anything where you say, I want to pay $25 million to him on his 5th-year option, which means you're on a 1-year rental with a quarterback who looks like he's lost all his confidence and you have to rebuild it and try to make a Super Bowl run. To me, that makes no sense. I don't know how they're going to do it. The other thing is Sam Darnold is yet to start 16 games in the NFL. Mono aside, his 2nd year, he's had small, like a foot bruise that kept him out, a foot sprain that kept him out, a small shoulder thing that kept him out. So if you're looking for the 100% durability that's there, and I get the Adam Gase excuse, right? Everybody wants to jump on Ryan Tannehill. I've said this before, and I'll continue to say it. Sam Darnold's really raw. He's the same raw player he was at USC. He's not grown in any more polish to his game. Ryan Tannehill was a polished quarterback when he played with Adam Gase. I don't think quarterback wins are a stat, but a lot of you do. Ryan Tannehill and Adam Gase had a winning record together. Their biggest problem was Ryan Tannehill got hurt. Ryan Tannehill was polished. He played like a veteran. He was smart, and he finally went to an offense that suited him, and he became a superstar. Ryan Tannehill and Sam Darnold are apples to oranges. Ryan Tannehill was just a much better player than Sam Darnold in every facet of their career thus far. So that is not the comparison. To me, you're looking at something that is a 1 in 100 shot in the dark. And it's way more risky than Rosen, because Rosen's right here on the roster. You're paying him $750K, and you're just asking him to be the backup or the third string. And if you get something out of it, you hit lightning in a bottle. And if you don't, you don't lose anything. With Darnold, you're giving up a pick, and Schefter seems to think it's a late first, early second, so it's a valuable pick. I don't know how Sam Darnold would be worth that, and you're giving that up for a guy who hasn't shown anything. And he's the only guy that we always go back and say he didn't have an offensive line, he didn't have a head coach, he didn't have a GM, but all these guys come into the NFL with that. Like Kyler Murray, his first year showed sparks, right? What was Kyler Murray playing with? Was Larry Fitzgerald. Oh, Larry Fitzgerald, Hall of Fame player. What is Larry Fitzgerald right now? Not that good. Hakeem Butler was a bust. Who did they have last year for Kyler Murray? He made their offense happen. Joe Burrow this year before he got hurt. What is Zach Taylor? Can someone explain to me how Zach Taylor is this brilliant play caller? They basically spread it out and didn't run Joe Mixon and had Joe Burrow throw it 40 times a game, and Joe Burrow would just make play after play after play happen. And maybe T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd are much better than any weapons, but that doesn't make that much of a difference.
Darnold, though, I'm not writing him off. He may turn around. He's a kid. Like, he was a number 3
He's
pick.
23.
Yeah, he's young. Like, everything we've said about Rosen applies to Darnold in his own way. I'm not writing off Darnold. All I'm saying is, why
does he get it?
Why does he get the benefit of the doubt? And why would you want to go trade a pick and pay him like $5 million when there's no real evidence that he's better than the guy that's already on your team in Josh Rosen? That's what I'm saying. Like, why does yesterday Dan Orlovsky tweeted, like, it was like, if Sam Darnold can get on the right team, I have no doubt. There's no doubt he can be a stud. Like, there's no doubt. No doubt? Really? But there is a doubt with Josh Rosen. Why?
I don't know. He does show glimpses of talent that these other guys don't show, but the consistency when you look at Sam Darnold as a player, like, I don't know why people wrote off Josh Allen last year after his as a young guy with nobody to throw to. The Bills went to the playoffs, and everybody's on the Josh Allen train. But before last year, everybody wrote him off, right? Bust. They put him as a bust. Daniel Jones has been written off similarly. And look, Sam Darnold's not more talented than Josh Allen, but he is more talented than Daniel Jones. But somehow people are sticking by him and not writing him off. I think the way Sam Darnold's been treated is how all young quarterbacks should be treated, actually.
Right. That's fine. But so why doesn't Rosen get? That's all I'm saying. Like, I'm nothing against Darnold. Stick with him. He's 23, yada, yada, yada. But, like, yay, what about Rosen, who's on his 4th system in 3 years? You know?
He had 3 coordinators in UCLA.
Correct. That team sucked. He had shoulder surgery. He had concussions. He got smacked at UCLA.
And you know what it is? You know what it is? It's what I always talk to. It's my number one pet peeve in sports and sports coverage. It's pre-draft perception. Sam Darnold, people said, was the next best prospect since Andrew Luck after his sophomore year of college. But guess what? He was nowhere near Andrew Luck. His game is still not polished. It didn't have that type of polish of a Trevor Lawrence and Andrew Luck.
He had one good year in college where he played with Ronald Jones, Juju Smith-Schuster, and a good defense that had like a Dory Jackson and a bunch of good players. Yes.
And he's still the same raw player he was then, right? And you're hoping Kyle Shanahan
throws a bunch of picks.
Yes. And you're hoping Kyle Shanahan can bring that polish to him, and I see why. But that pre-draft perception that he was this all-time great prospect is what's really keeping him alive. When people wrote off Josh Allen before the draft, people wrote off Daniel Jones before the draft. Right. People wrote off Drew Lock before the draft, and Drew Lock's got an absolute cannon, but people think Denver should move off of him and not give him the chances that a guy like Sam Darnold's getting. So look, his situation has sucked, but his play has also has been less than ideal. I would not be a fan of this move, and I don't want to be in a position where I trade for him and have to make a contractual decision on him immediately when I have a team that I think can compete for a Super Bowl.
Yes. Okay, let's move on. Because I don't want to talk about Sam Darnold ever again. Let's talk about the officiating in the NFL, because this is a favorite topic of 49er fans. I think Niner fans watched the Super Bowl last night with a great deal of schadenfreude. And if you don't know what Schadenfreude means, it is a German term, and it means taking pleasure in someone else's misery. And last night, the misery was the Chiefs complaining about calls. Niner fans like, oh, how does it feel? How does it? Yeah. No, I'm not going to sing. Anyway, I was going to do D'Angelo, but I just didn't. Anyway, because he wouldn't get it anyway. The song's about as old as Vish. What I want to say to you, Vish, is do you have any thoughts on the consistency or the inconsistency of the officiating in the NFL?
Yeah, and so first, I do want to preface this by saying the officials had zero to do with why the 49ers lost the Super Bowl last year, okay? You have to just come to terms with that as a fan. But I do think that officiating crews in like the NFL in general, and I think there's a reason why Bill Belichick coaches his guys, based on the officiating crew. There's a thing that he's so detailed, they get into that. I think there is a reason for that. Just there's 3 games I'll bring up, okay? There's Bill Vinovich, okay? Bill Vinovich officiated the Niners-Chiefs game, right? Last year's Super Bowl. He's the guy who missed the call, Saints-Rams. What's Bill Vinovich's MO? Bill Vinovich's MO is he lets teams play. He doesn't call penalties. Their crew this year called the third. They were the third to last in penalties called this year in the NFL. Okay, third to last. That means of I think it's 17 officiating crews that they have. I think Bill Vinovich's crew was 11th in the number of penalties, 14th in the number of penalties they called. So that's not a lot of penalties.
But again, that's
called.
What the league wants,
right?
A lot of the
and
time,
that's Bill Vinovich's MO. So that played into advantage of the Chiefs, who like to hold and like to be really grabby with receivers, right? Tony Romo pointed it out, and there's a play that circulated around Twitter for a little bit, and it was really to point out Jimmy Garoppolo missing George Kittle, and again, Rich Madrid, who does a really good job with the Niners stuff, he was the one who posted it, and it's a cover 0 play where Daniel Sorensen busts basically the coverage and Kittle's wide open. But the backside of the play is actually not a bad decision by Garoppolo. Kittle is wide open 2 yards in front of him, but it's cover 0. Corner's playing outside leverage, and Emmanuel Sanders is about to break in for a touchdown, and the corner just holds him at the top of the route. Now, the next play was 3rd and 8 and was Garoppolo's best throw of the game, where he hits Kendrick Bourne for the first down. But that plays a touchdown to Emmanuel Sanders if the corner doesn't hold him at the top of the route. And those are the little things where yesterday's crew, Carl Sheffers, who called the second amount of penalties in the NFL, they would have called the penalty in that game, and that would have made a difference. And you can look at the difference between Carl Sheffers' crew in the NFC Championship game and Carl Sheffers' crew in the Super Bowl. In the NFC Championship game, if Carl Sheffers was the one who officiated that game, I have no doubt that the Green Bay Packers would have won that game, because I forgot who officiated that game, but they let them play. And that officiating crew, the Packers receivers were getting mugged. And the Packers offense, someone else pointed it out. I think it's Chris Sims. He said the Packers offense is about execution. And if they're not getting the calls and stuff like that, they're not going to out physical or out talent anybody, because their offense is built solely on execution. And so the referee crews in general, because of the inconsistency and the human error in the NFL, is going to make a difference. I think the number one thing you should do, and it's what I've taught myself to do as a fan, is try and know the officiating crew. Don't get yourself worked up in the game if Bill Vinovich doesn't make calls. Bill Vinovich never makes calls. Don't get yourself worked up if
all the time. They'll be like, "Oh, it's this crew tonight." We already know Scott Foster's coming to town.
Right, James. If you were a Nets fan, Scott Foster is reffing the game. You might as well turn the TV off, because James Harden doesn't win with Scott Foster.
Yeah. Same thing. It's interesting to see these guys' tendencies. And honestly, if Bill Vinovich wants to not call a lot of things and not make the game about him, that's fine. That's what he always does. If Carl Sheffers wants to call the game by the book and not let any leeway go by, that's fine. As long as they call it the same way throughout the entire game, I really don't care. Because in baseball, they talk about how you got to have robots doing the stuff and you want to take the human element out. I like that umpires and referees have a style, and that's part of the game too. I kind of like that. I always have.
I hate it.
Scout them. Get to know them, because they're going to call it. If they're good, they're going to call it the same way the whole time. They're a human being. No one's going to call the same game the same way. No two referees are going to call one game the same way for 60 minutes. That's just impossible. They're humans.
And
so at least just be consistent.
It's unfortunate because, if you're the Niners, you're probably thinking, hey, if we had Carl Sheffers last year, we might have won. And it's hard not to think like that. But the ultimate thing is that the NFL doesn't pick and choose. I feel like Carl Sheffers, I feel like they don't pick and choose these officiating crews to help a certain team or hurt a certain team. Right. It's just the way it goes. You have to know that officiating crew, and that's part of playing the game.
Yeah, it's part of the battle. I think it's cool. Anyway, let's talk about Andy Reid. I don't know how we're going to tie this into the Niners, but I don't care. I mean, we're all thinking about Andy Reid right now, and he's one of the guys that's up there with Kyle as like the genius of the geniuses. And honestly, I mean, I think anyone that was picking the Chiefs, one of the main reasons was Andy Reid with the bye week. Legendary with the bye week. And the guy, he looked catatonic. Now, he's going through a lot, and I feel like I would probably be as shell-shocked if I were as he was if I were in his shoes. But that happened on Thursday with his son. That game plan was done by then. So something else is going on. There was a terrible performance all the way around. What did you think of what Andy Reid did or didn't do?
Yeah, I thought it was super rough. I thought Andy Reid was just terrible. I thought their game plan. Look, I only saw it on TV. I have to go back and watch and learn. But it felt like Andy Reid at the end of the first half was just like, crap, I got nothing. This isn't working. The screen pass, they're all over it. They're all over my adjustments. And it felt like the second half was, all right, Patrick, just run around and go make a play because this isn't working. And this is where Andy Reid, it feels like you have an offensive line that's horrible. You're going up against the best front four in the NFL this year, or one of them. They're in that conversation. And you're going against a defense with a lot of speed. Why this was the game to run the ball, and this was the game to try and run the ball, and you weren't going to have a lot of success running the ball, but you had to keep the defense honest. And he screwed themselves over by just spreading it out and asking Patrick Mahomes to do everything, because this was not the game to do that. You could
if you have Mitchell Schwartz and your typical offensive line, they're built to do that. But this offensive line couldn't do that. You wanted to help them out with bodies.
Right, and Andy Reid's usual adjustment to bad offensive line play is his screen game. Really great screen game. Well, they tried it at the beginning, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ate the screen game for breakfast. I think one of the ones, Shaq Barrett actually sacked Mahomes before he could even look to throw the screen, and he just dumped it off, and I think he threw it straight into the ground. And then the other one, the screen got knocked down, and then there was one more. I think there's three screens I remember, and the other one, Devin White was just all over it and was basically going to hit the running back before he caught the ball, and was an incompletion. So the screen game was not working.
But let me come back to what you said a minute ago about the run game, because to me that's key. What Bowles figured out was to do two deep safeties all game, and for a layman, basically what he's saying is run the ball. I dare you. I know you don't want to run the ball, because when you play too deep, you're a man down in the box. You're vulnerable to the run. And what he's saying is, I know you don't want to run the ball. You run the ball a token amount of times to keep us honest, but you want to throw. So we're going to play too deep, take away the deep stuff, and then say, if you want to average 7 yards a carry with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, go ahead. And they did. And they did average 7 yards a carry with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and still only gave him 8 carries. Ridiculous. They weren't down that far.
I think they played two deep safeties in that game 82% of the time, I want to say. They played 41% cover 2, 25% quarters, and 17.4% two-man. So that's all straight from Matt Bowen. So they played two deep safeties the whole time. And Edwards-Helaire was having success running the ball. And, I understand game situation got them out of it, but they didn't look committed to running the ball from the beginning. And the game was not over in the first half. And they didn't come out in the second half and ran the ball. And that was his big problem. And Andy Reid just looked like a guy who was shell-shocked. Like, Bowles is all over it. Well, yeah, because all he has to do is rush 4 and double Tyreek, double Kelsey, and you got nothing. And his answer, usually Andy Reid, right? The big thing with Andy Reid, and the reason I picked the Chiefs, is Andy Reid's usually got something. He's got something new. He's got something creative. He's got an answer that the NFL wouldn't have seen coming, that Bowles wouldn't have seen coming, and he would have something. He didn't have an answer in this game. And I know they tried stuff. I know they tried the screen game, but the answer shouldn't have been just make Patrick Mahomes run around. I don't know what the answer is, but usually Andy Reid has one thing.
I know what the hold on. No, here's what the answer is. Football.
It's run the ball.
It's run the ball. You can't pass protect. It's run the ball. You spent a first round pick on a running back. You have tight ends. Get out of this spread formation that's killing your backup tackles and run the freaking ball. It was clear that this offensive line was overmatched early in the game when it was close. It was predictable that they'd be overmatched. You're going against Jason Pierre-Paul, Vita Vea, Ndamukong Suh, and Shaq Barrett. It's serious defensive line. What did you think was going to happen? And the running game was working. They're playing too deep. They're inviting you, man. And he didn't do it. Kyle would have. Sean McVay would have.
Sean Payton would have. He just should have been. He just had to be committed to it. It's not even run the ball and try to win the game with your run game. It's just give something that's not going to get Patrick Mahomes getting killed every single play. And it's unfortunate that he didn't do it, but it's the first time I've seen Andy Reid just on the sideline look shell-shocked. Like if he just looked like a guy when it hit 21-9, he just looked like a guy, or was it 21-6 and then 28-9?
Yeah, I forget.
But it was 28-6. When it hit 28-6, he just looked like a guy that said, "I'm out of answers. He got me. I got," and it felt like that.
It's just interesting to see a guy who was strutting around all year and against the Niners look so meek, and it made me think, if it weren't for those miraculous, phenomenal 3 drives at the end of the Niner game, what would Andy Reid's legacy be? Now, to his credit, he doesn't have to answer that question because he pulled that off. But seriously, he is a one miraculous half of a fourth quarter away from having a totally different narrative. He'd be the guy who blew it twice to Patrick Mahomes. Because it's not Mahomes' fault.
No, I don't think so.
It's not.
I don't think you could have played better if you're Patrick Mahomes.
This game was won and lost in the trenches. Time for the Niners to invest more into their O-line for once. They're so invested in the D-line. That's great, man. And they tried with the O-line once with McGlinchey. It didn't work out. That doesn't mean you stop. And maybe it will work out. Maybe McGlinchey had a down year and he'll come back 315 pounds, just yoked and ready to play. Or maybe not. I don't know. Keep trying. If they take an offensive lineman with the 12th pick, that's fine by me.
I do agree this game was won and lost in the trenches, and I think it was underrated that the Chiefs' defensive line with their blitzing and with Chris Jones and Frank Clark, who's usually really good in the playoffs, they can usually get a push and dominate some plays. And they had the one stop in the goal line on 3rd and goal and 4th and goal, but for the most part, they got pushed around in this game.
Hold on. Sean had a question. He paid $5 to put this in your face. Just clarifying, Vish, you think the best D line in the league wasn't held the entire game?
I'm not saying that they weren't held. I'm just saying that Joe Vinovich's crew doesn't call it, and that's the reality of the situation.
Is that what you're saying, Vish? Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what he's saying. Hey, deal with it, Sean. We appreciate the donation though, but that's what Vish was saying. I'm on Vish's side on that one. The difference, and also, hold on. I really love the denial that the Chiefs fans are going through right now, blaming the refs, because that's step 1 of the Super Bowl hangover, baby. Niner fans know it. You go through it. You go through, we didn't lose that game. The refs cost us. We'll be back next year. We missed it.
It's the easiest excuse to attach to as a fan. And the funny thing is, if the Chiefs think they can just run it back and everything, they're going to have to make some foundational changes to their team because they're over the cap right now. And there's some very good player that's going to be a cap casualty, whether it's Tyrann Mathieu. I don't know who it's going to be. And it's going to be super interesting because now Brett Veach, your draft classes, they're going to be put up to the test on where's the depth going to come from with this team. So it'll be super interesting how they move forward.
I think in 2022, both Fisher and Schwartz will be free agents. And what I've been saying about the Chiefs since we started doing the show is I think pretty soon they're going to be the Seahawks, which isn't the worst thing you could be. I mean, they have a winning season every year. They make the playoffs every year. But what's interesting about the Seahawks is they went to the Super Bowl back-to-back years. They could have gone 3 years in a row. They went real close to going 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
They win it the first time they go with a young Russell Wilson, not making any money, like 24. They go back the next year, lose on the next play, and you're thinking, man, this team's going to be there all the time. And then he gets paid, and he hasn't been back since. Similar thing happened with Aaron Rodgers. I expect the same thing to happen with Patrick Mahomes, even though I do think he's the first or second best quarterback in the league. It's the way the NFL's set up. Do you think they're going to fall off like that, or do you think that Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are going to find a way to stay on top?
You don't know, right? Yeah. You don't know. Like Brett Favre, another example, won a Super Bowl, then went back to another one and lost. And everyone said Brett's going to be back. He never went back.
Never went back.
Yeah, so they said that about Russell Wilson. He'd be back to a lot more. Aaron Rodgers. So you have no idea. I think the big advantage for Kansas City is that they have Andy Reid too, so you know that they're always going to be right in that conversation, right in contention. But you've always brought it up, right? Because there's a guy in their division who they just hired, Brandon Staley, and they have a ton of talent in on their roster with Tom Telesco, who's one of the best drafters in the NFL. And that's Justin Herbert, who, in my opinion, just had maybe the best rookie season ever. When you take into the fact that he didn't have a rookie minicamp, he didn't have a minicamp, he basically started his first game with zero preparation, like not even knowing 5 minutes before the game. They told him he was starting, and he broke the touchdown record and had, in my opinion, by every metric, a top 10 quarterback season. And so I think that maybe the Chargers stay healthy. Maybe they load up their roster this year because they can, because Justin Herbert makes next to nothing. That's where it becomes trouble, because Mahomes might be better than Justin Herbert, but Justin Herbert with a much better team is going to beat Patrick Mahomes with the worst team.
We see it every year. So it's going to be interesting. I expect the Kansas City Chiefs to come back to earth a little bit, and I think
people realize that. Yeah. And that's the number one test, right? The biggest benefit, or the biggest thing, the biggest shining light in Brady and Belichick and what they've achieved in their careers is that they won with so many iterations of different teams. It wasn't the same core that they won with. Right. The first time it was Lawyer Malloy and Richard Seymour and Willie McGinnis and those guys and Ty Law. And then the next time it was with Rodney Harrison, Brady, similar core. Then they came back and they won with Darrelle Revis, Brandon Browner. So they've won with all these different iterations of their team. Well, this is going to be the test for the Chiefs now, because it won't be the core of Frank Clark, Chris Jones, Tyrann Mathieu, Mitchell Schwartz, Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce. That's going to be that team.
No, the constant is going to be Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. That's it. Everything else changes.
And Tyreek Hill, I think.
And yeah, maybe. But again, this is what the NFL wants. This is the way they set up the league. They don't want dynasties to dominate for half a decade like the Warriors did. They want to break the team up and have intrigue. And if you can find a new way to build a team and compete, great. That's what the Patriots did. But you're not allowed to keep the whole team together. It's just we've seen it a million times. It's the way the league wants it. They want parity. So that's the way it is. Real quick, Sean, I'm gonna answer your question. I know that I missed a bunch of questions. I'm sorry. If you donated and asked a question, if I missed it, ask it again in all caps. Don't spend any more money. Ask it again, all caps. I'll find it. We'll answer it. Sorry about that. Sean, those Curry threes didn't work for the Squads. That's how I look at it too. They're like a three-point shooting team in basketball. They want big plays. They go downfield. They throw outside the numbers. They don't take the gimmies. They don't take the layups. Of course they held. Kermit the Frog was hopping from lily pad to pad. Niners, he said, my legacy. Look, Sean, I couldn't follow the whole thing, but you're hilarious. And Kermit, you're the best.
I didn't understand a word of that.
I appreciate you. Yeah, I guess he's saying that Mahomes holds the ball a long time. He throws downfield. Of course, the Chiefs held. Well, hey, man, I'm not a Chiefs fan. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the faster you come to terms with the fact that they held and they didn't call it is just the fact that the longer. I mean, you just have to come to terms with it. Yes, there was holding in that game. They didn't call it. It is what it is.
It is what it is. We have some all caps questions coming in that I trust were donated questions earlier. So real quick. Yo, Grant, Dak just followed Washington and was left out of Cowboys hype video. Is that true?
That'd be an incredible. I have no clue, but that would be an awesome fit for Dak Prescott. He deserves better than the Dallas Cowboys. Anything anti-Dallas Cowboys, I'm all here for it. And Dak Prescott is too good of a man, too good of a player to play for the Dallas Cowboys.
And I always like a team poaching a player from a rival in a division. Make yourself better while making a division rival worse. It's always a good move. And he's familiar with the division. He's played those teams every year. If he could go to Washington, that would be a great move for him and for Washington. And if Martin Mayhew can pull that off, good for you, Martin. All of a sudden, you're making moves that John Lynch hasn't made. Wow. Hey, do you, Martin? Do you? Hold on, we got more. Grant, tell Vish he looks great today. Vish, you look great today.
No, I appreciate that.
Raj says, hey, Grant, I have a draft idea. Oh, yeah, my bad. I saw this one earlier. How about we trade down and pick up a second, take Horn in the first, and left tackle and edge in the second in depth in later rounds? It's clever. It seems like you're trading down, getting more assets, hitting the weaknesses. I don't see a quarterback in there, but honestly, I wouldn't force the quarterback pick in 2020 because Rosen's on the team. I'm not saying just ignore it, but I wouldn't force it. I wouldn't force it.
Yeah.
If Kellerman is available with the second round pick, I'd be interested in that. If Trask is available with the second round pick, I'd be interested in that. I wouldn't trade up for a guy though. I wouldn't.
If the plan ends up being Jimmy and a rookie and they don't look at anybody that they can get, let's say, because I think we all agree Fields, Wilson, Lawrence are kind of out of question without a drastic trade up, right? We can agree on that. So if they don't look at Lance and love him, or they don't look at Jones or Trask or any of these guys and love them, then they do have a really, really young prospect who's more talented, in my opinion, than definitely three of them. And the fourth one is the rawest of the guys in Lance. But I think Rosen has more pure talent for this.
And you do have an offensive line that you could say that while maybe it's not as bad as some people say, it's not particularly great in pass protection.
No,
and
it's not.
Just swapping out a quarterback isn't necessarily fixing it.
No.
So, Raj, I think it's a very good idea. I haven't started getting into all my mock drafts yet and how exactly I'm going to maneuver, but this is clever. I like it. In fact, I may steal this idea. I may come back to this and steal it and not credit you because that's what I like to do. Just take Vish's ideas most of the time and repackage them as my own. No, I don't do that, Vish. I would never do that to Vish. Hold on. I think there was another question.
Yeah, it was up there. It was
Debo.
Yes.
And your Debo. Okay. The Chiefs have been enabled last 2 years. The game confirmed they played dirty. They weren't going to let it fly with their precious TB12 and got exposed. That's like 8 levels of conspiracy theory, which is kind of I like that. But all I'm saying is if Niners and Niner fans are complaining that they didn't get the calls and Brady gets the calls, you could have had Brady. That's how pro sports works. Yeah, Michael Jordan got the calls. Yeah, LeBron James gets the calls. You want a guy like that because again, these refs are humans and they're in awe. They're in awe of these. They're not in awe. No one's in awe of Jimmy Garoppolo.
I'm going to be honest. The conspiracy aspect of this just baffles me. I thought Brady was old news. Why would the NFL want Brady to get the calls anymore? He's only there for 2 years around. They need to hype up the new golden boy, and that's Mahomes.
Good point. I don't think there was anything the refs could have done to get the Chiefs to win that game.
No.
They weren't going to win that game with that offensive line and that game plan together without any type of serious adjustment. No. It just wasn't going to happen. So you can blame Carl Sheffers, but I think Carl Sheffers did the best he could.
They were outcoached and outmatched on both sides of the ball, both lines of scrimmages. That's what happens.
Yeah. All right. Adam Garcia says, what do you think about this trade? Jimmy G and our 2021 third to the Patriots. Patriots send Houston their 2021 first, and we send our 2021 and 2022 first for Watson. I'd rather give up capital than players.
Wait, why would the Patriots send their first to Houston? Is Jimmy G worth a first and a third here?
Yeah. I don't think Niner fans understand that Jimmy G has no trade value. I don't think he has any trade value. Does he have trade value? It's just that he keeps getting.
I think that's one with him. And then the other thing with him is that because his contract is so team friendly, when you know that the Niners can cut him, the incentive to trade for him goes down because you feel like you might be able to get him on a new contract. So that's where I think it's a little different with him. Ultimately, I mean, if we can get Deshaun Watson for something like this, which I don't think this is that bad, then sure. Yeah, why not?
Do you buy that the Seahawks are listening to the Russell Wilson trade offers? I would be if I were them. It just seems like how many different configurations are they going to try to do with Russell Wilson before they realize that it just can't be done? I don't know. And like, how old are they going to let him get before they try something else? It's a tough one because look at Bill Belichick getting rid of Tom Brady. Now even Bill Belichick looks crazy for doing something like that. But Russell Wilson isn't Tom Brady. No one's Tom Brady. Guy's had a lot of chances to win and he hasn't gotten it done. I don't know. Would you buy it if you heard that they were? Why would they do? You have to
I
listen.
know. I buy that other teams were calling them. I don't buy that the Seahawks were genuinely entertaining it.
They might answer the phone.
Yeah, you might answer it, but I think the big thing is I think you brought up a really great point, and that is, I'm not going to bet against Seattle, even though I'm waiting. I'm waiting with everything for the day that this thing just collapses, because I don't know how you can keep trying the same thing over and over again and have it fail in a different way every single time. Right. And that's what's happening to Seattle. I think they need something new. They need a burst of new in there, whether it's fire Pete or get rid of Russell. It's got to be something brand new.
I agree, because they've tried different offensive lines. They've tried different offensive coordinators. No, for whatever reason, the combo of Pete and Russell Wilson in his prime making money, it's not working.
It's had its day. It's at its time, and its peak after those Super Bowls was win 10 games and maybe win a playoff game. That's what it is.
The way I looked at Pete Carroll is what made him a great head coach was that he could win with a young quarterback, because he'd give him this defense and this running game and make it easy on him. But he abandoned that formula because he stuck with Russell Wilson, gave him $35 million a year, and now he just has this. He's not giving Russell Wilson much of a team anymore, and that's what he used to have. And now it's like, well, now you're just a guy who has a great quarterback and gives him like a C- system, a D offensive line, a C- offensive coordinator, and say, hey, Russell, go figure it out. Like, all right, well, imagine Russell Wilson on the Chiefs or somewhere with a little more offensive creativity. He might actually be even better. In fact, he would be. He definitely would be. So Andrew says, if Jimmy never played those games in 2017 and didn't get that big contract, where do you think this team would be? Oh, I love this question. I've never actually thought this through. If Jimmy never played those games in 2017.
But you still got traded to the 49ers.
Yeah, but honestly, that's a legit scenario where Kyle just says he's not ready. Like Rosen wasn't. He's just not ready.
I think that would have been the scenario if he never.
If he wouldn't get the contract.
Right. If Beth, I think what would have happened is they would have franchised him, or it would have been all. It would have been all about what he was like in the building. Because if they weren't 100% with everything he was in the building, then they would have let him walk in free agency and handed the big bag to Kirk Cousins. But I think let's say, okay, so let's take the scenario that they just loved him in the building. He was everything they thought he was. He was everything Kyle liked before the draft. Then I think it would have been a franchise tag. Let's play it by ear.
They just gave up the second round pick. I have a hard time seeing them just throw the second round pick away to bring him in, have him play no games and let him walk. Really? I don't see. I mean, would you get a comp pick? Yeah, you get like a late third, but I mean that's not enough. So I do think they'd franchise tag him just to maintain the asset. And then okay, let's say he comes back and tears his ACL week 3. Let's say that was just final destination stuff for him, and now you're not financially committed to a dude with a torn ACL. Now he comes back and you give him a 3-year. $50 million deal, a 3-year. What do you give him?
I don't even know. Or maybe it's a decision tag, or maybe you just let him walk. Who knows? Maybe. It would have been really different. It would have been interesting. Who knows if he even tears his ACL? It would this is such a cause and effect scenario that the ripple effect on the timeline could have been totally different if all of this happened.
But I like that we go back because I like playing what if what if Ted Ginn Jr. hadn't gotten hurt against the Saints? Would Kyle Williams have blown it in 2011? This is a good one too. If Jimmy Garoppolo had never, because when it happened, it felt like the greatest 5-game stretch that didn't count of all time, right? It was so exciting for Niner fans, but in retrospect, it was fool's gold, and it set us back. Damn, if only that hadn't happened. I think that's great. All right. Maitland Eagle says, according to scouts around the league, the OT class is deep and talented this year. Likelihood of Niners drafting O-line round 1 or round 2.
I think that there should be some investment in the offensive line. It's when I say that their offensive line, I don't know how much better it can get. I truly believe that offensive line play across the league is not great, but I'm not saying that the Niners offensive line is just phenomenal. I think they're good at run blocking and they struggle with pass protection. It's been well established. So I don't think investment in the offensive line is a bad thing. I just think it's unlikely. I think the Niners are really dug in on Mike McGlinchey, in spite of Grant's disagreement. So this is going to be super fun because Grant's probably going to give the first 2 picks in F, and we're going to get Grant covering McGlinchey this offseason. So it's going to be entertaining for all of us. And we're going to get it's going to be Dante.
Hold on, real quick. If they take an offensive tackle in like late round 3, that's cool with me because I honestly believe a late 3rd round offensive tackle can compete with McFloppy right now. That's fine if they do that. But if they just totally neglect the offensive tackle position and come back with McGlinchey, School, and Sean Coleman, I'm going to be skeptical. So we'll see. We'll see. They can prove me wrong on that one. But if round 1 or round 2, yeah, sure. Round 3, I'd take that too. I think that would be fair to do it in round. And they have what? How many 3rd round picks?
They have one.
They have
Robert Saleh.
Okay. All right. Was that the last question? I think that was the last question. All right, let's get back on track. These are 2 questions that I'm excited about. And this one, Vish may not have as much to say as me because I'm 12 years older than you. Am I 12 years older than you? 12 years older than you? All right. My brother's 12 years older than me. It's kind of interesting. Anyway, so the difference between Kyle Shanahan and Mike Shanahan, I've been thinking about it. They're both brilliant. I mean, Mike has to be very proud of Kyle. He really raised one of the most respected coaches in the NFL. I'm sure Mike feels about Kyle the way my dad feels about me. Probably even more proud of Kyle than my dad is. I don't know how my dad likes me that much. I don't know. Anyway, I think there's a key difference between these two, though. It seems to me, and I'm throwing this by you to see if you disagree. It seems to me that what Mike Shanahan was able to do, and I don't know if it was strategic or if it was just happenstance, if it just worked out that way, but he linked up with John Elway in like 1985. He was a wide receiver coach at Florida. He got hired by the Broncos, and he became very close with John Elway. He was his coach. Their wives were friends. They were friends. They were close in age. And he was always able to come back to Elway. I mean, he almost got Reeves pushed out. When Reeves finally did get fired, Shanahan came back and got the head coaching job. And really, his association with Elway made his career. He never did much after Elway retired. He did have that Super Bowl with Steve Young as well. Kyle hasn't been able to cultivate that kind of a relationship with a future Hall of Fame quarterback yet. So that to me is the difference, but there's time for Kyle, I guess.
Yeah. That's
about it.
My earliest memories of Mike Shanahan was
Jake Plummer.
Yeah, Jake Plummer was it 2006? In 2006, like 6-year-old me, I think, or 7-year-old me, 6 would just attach myself to whatever team is winning in the sport. So I was a Niners fan, but Niners weren't any good. So I was a Patriots fan, and 2006 me was devastated that Jake Plummer and Mike Shanahan beat Tom Brady and the Patriots, and they beat them definitively. It was 27-10, I think, 27-13, something like that. So that's my earliest memories of Mike Shanahan. But I do think that that's part of it, right? Because being a brilliant offensive coach, you only really get your regard is if you're attached to that great quarterback. Sean Payton, Drew Brees, Bill Walsh, Joe Montana, Mike Shanahan, Steve Young, and it's mostly John Elway, right? Because he's the guy John Elway trusted, and he's the guy that finally got John Elway over the hump, and he's the guy John Elway believed could get him over the hump, and he achieved it.
When Shanahan won the Super Bowl with the Niners and they got rid of Reeves or whoever it was in Denver, Elway pushed for Denver to hire Shanahan. I mean, that's how it works.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know if it was planned on Mike's part or if it just worked out that way, but it's to me the difference right now between Mike and Kyle, because Kyle is extremely creative in terms of straight up play design. He might rival his dad, but his dad was able to. I mean, the quarterback ultimately is more important than the play design, and that's to me the difference. Again, Kyle is 41; he has time to develop a relationship with one of these quarterbacks. But
every great coach, you have to be attached to the hip with one, like Mike Holmgren, Brett Favre. So each one of these guys, Andy Reid finally got it, Patrick Mahomes. So you need to be attached at the hip to the great quarterback. And Kyle had I think the closest thing Kyle had, I mean, Matt Ryan's probably going to be a Hall of Famer, but I don't think he's at the elite level that these other guys were. But with Kyle, he did play at an elite level, and that's the closest thing they had. And they had kind of a rocky relationship. I wasn't there for the relationship, obviously. I was just observing it from afar and based on other people's reporting. But 2015, they started 6-0, and Kyle Shanahan and Matt Ryan were really rocky, and it seemed like Kyle Shanahan was leaving. And apparently the story is that him and Matt Ryan went and had a few beers at the bar, and they got over their differences. And that's how Kyle came back in 2016. Matt Ryan worked on his deep ball, and bang, you have one of the greatest offenses in NFL history. But I'm not sure if Matt Ryan ever got over their beef in 2015. And the only reason I say that is because after that 28-3, when everybody blew it, not just Kyle Shanahan, Dan Quinn never stood up for Kyle Shanahan. To me, it felt like Dan Quinn was just trying to not take the blame. But Matt Ryan also had an opportunity to stand up for Kyle Shanahan or say nothing and not stand up for him. And instead, Kyle Shanahan, he took Kyle Shanahan, he saw him going down the river, and he gave him an extra push by saying the play calls weren't coming in fast enough. And that's why I think we didn't win that game. And
I think Kyle Shanahan may have
he responded to it, if you remember.
And saying, well, we can't take those sacks, things like that. So
he responded to it. Yeah. He was asked about it when he became the head coach, and he said, the thing I was most proud about in Atlanta was that we never had a delay of game penalty, and we never had a they had some statistic where they didn't have any timing pre-snap penalty, and he said, it's a lot more into the game. Like, I could call the play at 15 seconds, but if I call the play at 15 seconds and the quarterback sees this and the quarterback takes a sack, then he went on one of his longer kind of monotone rants. But the outline was he defended himself and said, I'm really proud of the fact that we didn't have a delay of game penalty, and I thought the play calls were coming in fast all season. So there was that. I don't know how much stock to put into that. I don't even know if that's a thing.
What's interesting is you mentioned how these coaches have to be attached at the hip with a quarterback, and you said Andy Reid with Mahomes, which got me thinking, yes, he was also attached to the hip with McNabb forever. Believed in McNabb.
Empowered McNabb.
Empowered McNabb. That is the word I was looking for. Empowered McNabb to play better than really maybe McNabb would have for other. I mean, McNabb had a lot of weaknesses in his game.
Wasn't McNabb the quarterback that when they took him, Philadelphia went berserk and booed because they wanted Ricky Williams?
He was always a little overweight. His mechanics were terrible, but he was a playmaker. He could run, and he won. Andy Reid went to 5 straight NFC championships with the dude. Anyway, so it worked with Andy Reid and Donovan McNabb, who was maybe a B-plus quarterback. Kyle gets Donovan McNabb, and they are at each other's throats immediately. I mean, it's documented that it didn't work out. So that was the first one. I mean, it worked with Kyle and Shaw, but Shaw was he was a backup before he became a starter. He was a backup to Vic, right? In Atlanta. Anyway, so it didn't work with Kyle and McNabb when it worked with McNabb and Reed. It didn't work with Kyle and RG3. I'm not taking sides. That's just two. There was some friction between Kyle and Matt Ryan. And it seems like, I'm not saying there's friction between Kyle and Jimmy, but it's not exactly a happy marriage. So that's 4.
No.
That's 4.
And Kyle was never fully happy with Jimmy. How many times as a 49ers fan, how many times do I have to read that same stupid report? Kyle Shanahan has his reservations about Jimmy Garoppolo, and he feels he can win with any quarterback, that even one that isn't as highly paid as Jimmy. But they like Jimmy. I read that same report, rinse and repeat, probably 25 times in the last 2 years, and I hate reading it. It's the worst thing you want to read, because you want, as a fan, you just want your quarterback coach to be in co-concert, ho-hum, everybody's doing a little dance and a little jig and being happy together, but that's not the reality of business.
And that's what Harbaugh would say about Colin all the time. He's a superstar. He's a superstar. And you just try to speak it into existence. You're not like, yeah, man, we'll have to see. I don't know.
Yeah, and so right, and it's an unfortunate reality, but yeah, I do think it's something to observe, because who knows, right? Who knows with Kyle Shanahan? It's tough to take a side on what went wrong, because I think there's a lot more that went wrong that nobody knows about. But there is a pattern here of him not getting along with Donovan McNabb and RG3, and Matt Ryan was rocky, and Jimmy G, he wasn't 100% there, and he could be right in all 4 of those situations. But it's just one of those things where there's smoke, there could be fire, or there's usually fire.
Do you agree with Deebo Samuel's tweet that the league got lucky the Niners were injured? Do you think injuries were our only issue this year?
They weren't the only issue. I do think the league got lucky from the standpoint that the Chicago Bears, oh my God, imagine if the Niners were healthy. The Chicago Bears would have never made the playoffs, and God, my life would have been better. But unfortunately, the Chicago Bears made the playoffs. God. But I do think I think that if the Niners were healthy, I 100% believe they would have made the playoffs. Now, does that mean, just the injuries was the reason they wouldn't have won the Super Bowl? I don't know if you can say that, because you look at what Tampa Bay was, and they were the final product, and they won the Super Bowl. I don't know if you can 100% with conviction say that the Niners were a more complete team than this Tampa Bay team. I mean, this Tampa Bay defense, especially with Vita Vea playing, would have really given the Niners trouble, because they're the kind of defense that matches up really well with what the Niners do. And
you're right, Vita Vea.
And the offense, right? And the offense would have given. They can't block Shaq Barrett or JPP. No. I think Shaq Barrett had 3 sacks week 1, if I remember correctly. He had 3 sacks, so they couldn't have blocked them either. And then the other thing is, this Tampa Bay offense is also a pretty good matchup for what the Niners defense do, because they're a really big team, and they're going to impose their will running the football and look to throw the ball down the field and really test the Niners' younger corners and stuff. So I do think from that standpoint, like, it would have been a really interesting matchup to see unfold. I don't know if you can definitively say that the injuries were the reason that the Niners didn't win the Super Bowl, but the injuries were definitely something that hurt them from making the playoffs for sure.
I can tell you that, as someone who covers this team and is somewhat connected to the coaches and players, this is the attitude the team had all year, that the league is lucky, the Niners are unlucky for whatever reason, and that the NFC is wide open. And if they had had any health, they would have been back there. And I think the Niners were kidding themselves. I don't think any team took Tampa Bay seriously enough until like 24 hours ago. Honestly, I think people were like, oh, okay, now you always hear like, well, they're great. I mean, the D line and the this and the that. It's like, well, okay, well, that's not what you were saying like 4 months ago. I'm not saying you. I'm just saying, like,
right.
The perception has changed a little bit. I think even a month ago, people were like, Tampa's not for real. And now I think people are looking at Tampa as like, that's a team that's New England now. That's New England. That's the team that's going to be there every year. Oh my God. Like, yeah, I think the Niners have a big problem. The Packers have a big problem. The NFC has a big problem. It's a big problem. Because honestly, it looks like he could keep playing like this till he's 47. Maybe 47 and a half. All right, let's move on. At 48, though, that is too much. All right, this is our final topic. We can take some more questions after it, but it dovetails with the previous one about Kyle and Mike. I think Kyle and Mike are different in a significant way. We talked about it. I think Kyle and John Gruden are almost identical. I think they're very similar in very important ways, but I'm not going to say it yet. Vish, you've seen John Gruden. You know Kyle Shanahan. Do you think they're similar?
First of all, I just want to preface this by saying I really want the Raiders to fire John Gruden, because I really miss him in the Monday night booth. I really do. It's not that he ever said anything that was profound or he was adding anything to the game, because I think for like the first 4 or 5 years he did it, he refused to criticize anybody. It's just he's got this way and voice about him, like, did you see it? And he was like, oh, Aldon. And the way he used to love Aldon Smith, 2011, 11-year-old me used to love when he used to say, Aldon Smith is the best pass rusher that's walked through those doors since Charles Haley came from James Madison. So I miss him saying those things, and I miss John Gruden in the Monday night booth. The other thing is Kyle Shanahan obviously learned a lot from John Gruden. He was his quality controller for 2 years. And so there is some similarities between their offenses. And there's clearly, like, Kyle Shanahan respects Gruden, and Gruden is really well respected around the league in similar ways that Kyle Shanahan is. Now, I think Kyle Shanahan, by every account, is a way better coach than John Gruden.
Agree.
Gruden
doesn't get the ball down the field. Kyle does. Gruden is more of a control freak than Kyle. Kyle's like, hey, man, air it out. Let's go.
Way smarter.
Gruden's like,
way more creative.
More than 5 yards down the field.
Smarter,
more thinking. Yeah.
Smarter, more creative, better leader, better control of the entire perspective, just a better coach in general. I mean, there were questions with the Raiders. I think there was an article in The Athletic that came out about how the Raiders had an accountability problem and a leadership problem. We're yet to get that bombshell from the 49ers. So I'm going to say Kyle Shanahan's a way better leader
also
than John Gruden.
In a defense, Kyle has put together a defense.
Right. I do think the one thing that's kind of similar between them, and it's kind of unfair to put it on Kyle, I will say that, but it is been similar thus far, so you have to say it, is is their relationships with quarterbacks and this idea that they're always flirting with the next quarterback, even though they got a guy
always drawn to the backups, dude.
Right.
Always drawn to the backups.
And I do think there's something there with that. You're definitely going to elaborate on it more. So I'm going to leave that to you because that's where you are. But I do want to say something about John Gruden just because it has little relation with this topic. He just came up and I just wanted to reiterate it because I'm actually stunned with the perception on this. Like, I get it. Derek Carr is a very corny personality, and a lot of people don't like Derek Carr for those reasons. But to me, the fact it's bewildering for any other reason. Obviously, John Gruden's got that 10-year contract, but the fact that people let John Gruden get away with flirting with other quarterbacks and like Marcus Mariota and all of that, when Derek Carr is a better quarterback than John Gruden is a coach, is just sad to me. If we were going to rank top 15 coaches in the NFL, we would not say John Gruden. If we rank the top 15 quarterbacks in the NFL, guess what? Go watch Derek Carr from this year. Derek Carr absolutely makes that list. And so that's pathetic to me. That's sad. And to me, the relationship should be more, does Derek Carr need a new coach? And does John Gruden need to make me happy by returning to the Monday night booth?
Okay, let me make the case for why they're similar. To me, first of all, there's some coaches work with positive reinforcement, some do negative reinforcement. They are negative reinforcement guys. They will get on you if you make a mistake, and they're just, they're being blunt, they're keeping it real. That's just how they are. Players like their honesty, yada, yada, yada. They're not. Salah's the opposite. He doesn't yell. It's all positive. It's all good. If someone messes up, Salah's like, how did I let you down? You know what I mean? It's like, what have I done wrong for my son? That kind of stuff. So that's fine. That's their style. I think it works with vets. Grizzled guys like Matt Ryan, Rich Gannon. Like, Rich Gannon is not going to take it personally. It's not going to hurt his feelings. You know what I'm saying? He'll rise to the challenge. A dude like Derek Carr might be like, whoa, what is this coming from? Why do you like Nathan Peterman more than me? I'm better. That's one thing. The other thing is, and I think this is something deep down in both of their personalities, and I've seen it with Kyle. They really loved playing football. They wanted to be players. Kyle wanted to be a wide receiver. Gruden, I think, wanted to be a quarterback. And you look at them. I mean, they're not athletes. Gruden's like 4'5'6". Kyle Shanahan's tall, but it wasn't going to happen for Kyle. And they know it. They know they had those limitations. And I think they look at someone like some of these first round picks, some of these guys who are super, super gifted that the game comes easy to. And they're like, man, you don't care about the game like I do. If I had the talent you had, I would have been great. You're wasting it. I resent the fact that you don't, that kind of stuff. I think there's a little bit maybe more than a little bit of that with both of them. That's it. Yeah. Those are the similarities. Those are the two things.
And the thing with Kyle, like, you can't say he didn't want to be a player because he's said he was obsessed with the idea. He used to copy Ed McCaffrey and do everything he did. And he was really obsessive about being a player. And if you see him even today, you've reported and other people have reported that he still throws passes in practice. He tries to get involved. So you can tell that it meant a lot.
And then watches the film of himself after, which is the best detail. It's the cherry on top.
Which means that he's still looking on how to improve his own game. So you can tell that he's obsessed with it from that standpoint. So, yeah.
And I think when he looks at a guy like Nick Mullins, he identifies. It's like, yep, that's little me. Not quite gifted enough, but just so driven and obsessed and passionate. And then you look at $85 million Jimmy, it's like, well, I can't relate to that. I never had the arm, the looks, the money. But does he care about it like Nick does? And if he doesn't, I have a problem with that. And maybe Kyle's right for that. But that's just how I think this is how those two guys are. And that's when Gruden gives Carr a hard time, that's the basis of it. Because like you said, Carr is better at his job than Gruden is at his. Period. Yeah. Kyle's better at his job than Jimmy is at his. So I get where Kyle's coming from, but Gruden, no.
Yeah, and I guess Beathard, I know nothing about CJ Beathard, and he comes across as a very, very lax guy, but he must be of the same, he must be a grinder too, I guess.
The CJ Beathard conundrum will never make sense to me. I would love a 30 for 30 on the CJ Beathard experience, why that happened. Sure, it's a great story. Anyway, those are all the topics we had. It's been an hour and a half. It's definitely dinner time for Vish, but we just got one more question, so we'll take a couple more. Don't you eat around 6? I usually eat around 6. When do you eat? Oh, Sebastian says Kyle is insecure. Aren't we all? Tobin says Grant, if you say that Kyle is obsessed with football and wants a guy who goes all in, why did he not say yes to Tom Brady?
No one knows. No one knows. And people give excuses like the money didn't work out, the contract didn't work out. But I think that the bottom line is, and I do want to drive that home, is that if he really wanted Tom Brady, they could have found a way to make it work. And if he was so convinced that Tom Brady would have been the reason, then he would have found a way to make it work. And if you're convinced Tom Brady's the reason, then the one guy you lose because the money didn't work, it's okay if you lose him because you have Tom Brady. And it comes down to the fact that I don't think Kyle Shanahan was 100% convinced that Brady was the answer. I don't.
Yes. And I also, I think there was a lot of people in the league this last year that thought he lost it. The arm wasn't there, that he was a big reason. I think the Patriots felt that way. I think it was reported that the Patriots never really made him a competitive offer. They made him an offer that basically said, hey, go if you want, because we need to move on. And I feel like that's how Bill Belichick felt. That's how Kyle Shanahan felt. And Tom Brady, competitor that he is, proved him wrong. So,
too bad.
I mean, everyone on my YouTube channel told me I was wrong. All my friends told me I was wrong about Tom Brady. The dude proved everyone wrong. I don't know how he did it because, honestly, his arm looks a lot stronger this year than it did last year. It does, doesn't it?
Nah. He still had the arm last year. He just didn't have weapons. And that's why I tell people, please calm down with the Cam Newton criticism because those weapons are really, really bad. What was Cam Newton supposed to do? But maybe we can do a Cam Newton topic another day.
It's true. But it just goes to show you again, why are the weapons so bad? Because of drafting, because Bill, because the head coach. So again, what I like, the Niner fans don't care, but I love this little legacy contest between Brady and Belichick. I freaking love it because it felt to me like Belichick threw down the gauntlet and was like, you know what? I wanted Jimmy. And Jimmy just went to the Super Bowl and you didn't. And I'm going to take this opportunity to show that my legacy was more than just you. And Tom was like, oh, okay, go ahead. Do it. I'm going to do the same thing. And we'll see. We'll see who wins. I loved it, man. I loved it. I kind of like Tom Brady.
You romanticize these sports stories too much.
I know. I don't know. He got up in Tyrann Mathieu's face. It seemed like he was wrong, not Mathieu. It seemed like he was.
But Tom Brady, God's gift on green earth, sent Tyrann Mathieu a long 3-paragraph text message today apologizing.
I'm not saying he's God's gift, but I appreciate that. The one thing I like about Tom Brady is when he walks off the field. That is so punk, and I don't. But
it's because he's so competitive that he can't do it. I'm just poking fun at the fact that people and now are gonna just find a way to put Brady on a pedestal for every action. Like tomorrow, when Brady eats his cereal, he's gonna be holding that spoon in a way that other people have never thought of holding his spoon.
Yeah, and that to me, I feel like is where you can see the difference in how white and black quarterbacks are covered. When Brady is a bad sport, somehow that's good. But when Cam Newton is a bad sport,
I'm a Pistons fan.
Well.
When the propaganda doc came out in the beginning of quarantine about the GOAT, Jordan obviously, but it was a fully propaganda doc. Remember the 1 week ESPN just bashing Isaiah Thomas, and Isaiah Thomas is going on every other show trying to defend himself and Bill Laimbeer for walking off the court.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They really made that a big deal, but it is a thing. But the thing about that is that the Pistons beat the Bulls more than the Bulls beat the Pistons. They made it seem
Tell them, Grant.
Yeah, they're like that show was like, hey, yeah, so we overcame the Pistons, and they were.
I took it personally.
Like, dog, you beat them one time. It's like LeBron James being like, yeah, we beat the Warriors that one time, and then that was that. Like, no, that's not the story. Anyway, Goldblood21 says, I know Grant likes Trask and might be best to wait till later in the draft for quarterback. If it is quarterback at 12, who are you higher on, Lance or Jones?
Okay. First of all, I do want to say something because I think people have gone a little crazy with what Grant's opinion of Trask is. Grant likes Trask, but Grant's not taking Trask at 12 either, okay? No. So Grant's not crazy about Trask. Jones, to me, is a second-round quarterback. The only reason you would take Jones in the first round is because you want to get his fifth-year option, which means you're only taking him between picks 28 and 32. Anything before that is too early, and I like Jones. I don't think he's bad. He's just not a first-round quarterback. Lance is a little bit of a wild card. He's probably the one I would take at 12 just because he's got the biggest physical upside and he's got this special running ability paired with an arm that's live and can make all the throws where you do see a ceiling to him. But I'm not totally enamored with all three options at 12, if I can say that. To me, Lance at 22, Jones at 32 or even 50, and Trask at 55, 60 would be the ideal value points for all three of them.
Yeah, if you could get Trask at 46, is that their pick? 44, 46? What is it?
Yeah, I think it's 44.
40-ish. Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. I wouldn't trade up for Trask. And if he's gone at 44, oh well. Sorry. If Kellen Mond's available, I'd take him there at 44 too. If he's not there, it wasn't meant to be. Wait till next. You still got Josh Rosen. There's still next year. So that's the way I would approach it. You know, there's a couple guys I like it at round 2, but not guys I have to have. Not guys I have to have. Anyway, Sean says, Vish, I think you mean Gruden was able to read the lips of Gannon, realize they were using the same play calls, taught it to his defense. Yes, Gruden won the Super Bowl. Callahan handed it to him on a silver platter. That's really neither. Yep, you're right, Sean.
But right. John Gruden put together that all-star defensive staff with Monty Kiffin, Gus Bradley, Joe Barry, Mike Tomlin, all those guys. John Gruden hired every single one of them for Tampa to run their Tampa 2 defense, right? No, they were already there.
Yeah. Christopher says SEC quarterbacks aren't good. Joe Burrow was an SEC quarterback. Dak Prescott was an SEC quarterback.
How do you generalize this?
Yeah. What? I mean, I understand the Alabama thing, but it also applies to places like USC and Ohio State. There's plenty of examples of quarterbacks coming from the SEC. People used to write off the Big 12 quarterbacks, and that's why Patrick Mahomes fell to 10. Honestly, that was the main thing.
Quarterback, yeah.
Never been done. No defense in the Big 12. All of his numbers and highlights don't count. Everything he does it. His arm strength, his mobility, doesn't matter. Big 12. The Big 12, sorry. Honestly, I fell into that.
The funny thing is, yesterday's game reminded me of watching Texas Tech Patrick Mahomes. No protection, just running around everywhere, making crazy throws. Yes. The guys are just dropping it. That's how he played at Texas Tech, and it was ridiculous then too. People just didn't recognize it.
And what he said, which was interesting, is like, yeah, you know, people held the Big 12 against me, but the way I always looked at it is I was always in shootouts. I was always having to come from behind. So in that sense, it did prepare me for the NFL. I thought that made a lot of sense. I mean, when he's down 20 in the second half, he's like, man, I've been in this position so many times. I know I'm going to come back. I've been doing it since I was 19. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. He had a ton of passing reps too.
Yeah, which is more important than, as we've learned, going to the Big Ten and handing off for 2 years like CJ did. Okay, District 13 says, shout out to them Niners. Shout out to the Niners Nation posters that fought me for weeks over Brady and how Jimmy is better. I love all these dudes like District 13 who are coming out saying, I always wanted Tom Brady. Where were you when I was on YouTube this summer saying Tom Brady, and 80,000 people were like, Grant, I will unsubscribe today if you mention Tom Brady's name again.
It's not cool to do that.
That's true.
I'm just happy that I started talking to Grant Cohn in 2020 and not in 2019.
It's true, man.
Few people that liked me in 2020 would not have liked me in 2019, especially during this conversation, just because I still felt that Tom Brady had a better arm than Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's why, and he was smarter, and that's why I would have made that move, just because I think it gave more long-term flexibility.
Yeah, you couldn't have said that as an up-and-coming analyst.
And I liked Jimmy, and I still really like Jimmy. Jimmy's a great guy.
Yeah, I like Jimmy too. He's always been nice to me. I think that's the problem. That it's like everyone likes Jimmy. I think there's something unlikable about Jared Goff. Maybe a little aloof. I don't know what it is.
there is something with Jimmy where you got to say, in spite of all the things he's gone through, like Richard Sherman has no reason to stick up and be complimentary of Jimmy Garoppolo at this point. That's not his job anymore, and he still went out of his way to do it. And it's just he is likable, and that's a really good thing in life in general.
You know who else loves Jimmy Garoppolo and vouches for him endlessly? Bill Belichick.
Yeah,
Bill Belichick. I mean, Bill Belichick only speaks of him in the highest terms, and you listen to when Jimmy talks of Bill Belichick. He reminds me of you, Vish. He's very well raised, and he's very deferential. I mean, he respects Bill Belichick. He's coach, and he doesn't respect Kyle in the same way because he's not Bill Belichick, but he's still respectful to Kyle. He's very, very. You could tell that he is close to his parents, loves his parents, respects his parents, was well raised.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Hey, Coach used to tell us that we got to do this, so we used to just follow Coach. Coach used to help us out a lot. Coach used to do this. That's how we talk about Bill Belichick. And even with Kyle, it's. I think one thing that he does do really well, and it's such a small thing, it's really not a big thing. It has nothing to do with his plays. He handles the press conference like a pro, and he does it in an elite way. And sometimes it sucks for you, Grant, as someone that has to cover him. But in terms of what he does for his teammates and stuff, he always finds a way to mention how great Kyle Shanahan is, how great his offensive line is, how great his running back is, how great
the opposing team is.
Yeah. No, for the opposing team, they got a good group. They're fast. They fly around. Yeah. So he goes, those are his go-tos. But even with Kyle, he goes out of his way. Hey, Kyle and those guys, they just do such a great job of really simplifying it for us, and we just go execute it. So he's just got a really nice way about him, and I understand why people like him.
I can definitely see why coaches like him. I mean, he's very respectful, but I think from Kyle's perspective, it's like, okay, like you're nice, you're paying attention, you're taking notes, you're making the same mistakes. I'm losing patience with you. You're 29 years old. You've been here for 4 years. I appreciate how earnest you are and how serious you are. Like, I think what the reports that came out about Goff, how they're questioning his commitment, and they've never said that about Jimmy.
I think the reason that came out is because Goff went with the Mike Silver, and him and his agent put out the piece that Goff wanted to go somewhere where he wanted to be, and McVay's
system was played out and got out, and he's Goff. Yeah,
I think that's why actually we don't like on Jared Goff.
We don't like your commitment. We don't like your accountability. Like,
we don't think you're good.
Damn. All right. Mo says might be unpopular, but the time to trade Debo is now. How do you think his value is? Wow. I mean, the only time it would be now to trade him is if you think he's going to have another 5-game season.
Full disclosure, Vish will never have objectivity about this topic. Just like Vish didn't have objectivity about Rosen, and full disclosure on the objectivity on Darnold. Deebo Samuel is Vish's favorite player in the NFL, and I say no to trade Deebo.
I think that's fine. Not every fan has to be a GM at heart. You're allowed to like your team and to like the players on the team and to want them to stick around for more than 2 years. I would trade Deebo. We've talked about that, but I get it, Vish, and I think that's cool. Everyone's become a fantasy football manager. It's back in the day. You just were the fan of your favorite quarterback,
Right, but my question is, what Deebo brings to this offense is so unique, and I think he's, other than Kittle, he's the guy that you can see a noticeable difference on every single thing that he does for this offense. Like, what are you going to get trading for Deebo? Okay, you trade him for a couple picks. You're going to go into the season with Ayuk and what? Like, what's the plan? How are you going to replace how much he protects your quarterback in the run game, how much he protects your quarterback, how much he helps your run game, all the things he does? The creativity to this offense is unlocked by Deebo Samuel. Remember, I had that, it's like 7 week we did that topic on who's the most important player on the Niners offense, and I kept saying it's Deebo Samuel. I still believe it's Deebo Samuel. So sure, trade him. What are you going to get? Okay, you get a pick. What are you going to use that pick for?
Well, again, the problem with committing to Deebo is, first of all, he's had injuries. He plays a physical style. Hamstring injuries are scary. He's had them since college. He is very good. If he plays 16 games next year, he could go for 1,400 yards. He could get 18, 19 million a season. He will be more expensive than George Kittle if he stays healthy and puts up the numbers he's capable of. And so then you should start making the same calculations you make with Nick Bosa. It's like, okay,
right.
Do I want to do this? I know he's really good, but the injuries and the price, that's it. I'm not saying he's not good.
But my thing is, if you trade Debo today and you're thinking about the price, then you're probably not thinking that you're going to win. Yeah.
But what Dude is saying is, I mean, if he proves to be an injury-prone player, you're actually not selling low. You're salvaging what you can get. I think he can put together one healthy season before he gets his second contract. Players seem to figure out a way to do that.
I think for Debo,
that contract year, they
play through it. But I think what really hurt Debo was he hurt his foot, right? Because he was working out hard in Houston. They were talking about how hard he was working out. He hurt his foot. I think he sat for a while. Then he came back, and I think as he was getting himself in football shape, it was just in and out of injuries. And Kyle Shanahan seemed to indicate in that final press conference that he expects more from Debo in terms of taking care of his body. Maybe that he thought that Debo could have done a couple things to prevent it. So,
well, yeah, I mean, he has his excuses, and there were an unfortunate series of events from this year. But the fact of the matter is, it's not the first hamstring injury he's had. He now needs to make sure it never happens again. That's his job. So we'll see. We'll see. And if he does figure that out, what a player he's going to be. District 13 swears that he was all over Tom Brady. Hey, I believe you, man. I definitely believe you, and I respect you. So fair play. Good one. I'm not taking shots. Mark Lamar says, what?
You might have been on your burner then, so you might not have seen it.
It's not. Yeah, I might possible. It's not Debo's fault. Kyle has to use him like he does to help a quarterback who's on a leash. It's true.
Yeah, 100%. But I would make the argument, like, I think that is a thing, and I think that I've always talked about it, that I think that there's so much to Debo's game that hasn't been unlocked. But quarterback or not, that's not going to change the fact that Debo Samuel is going to run into the next defender like a brick wall, and he's going to be making cuts at 100 miles an hour. Like, those things are going to happen regardless of who's the quarterback. So Debo's not going to protect himself on the field regardless. I do think it'll help by not being used only behind the line of scrimmage, and he has a skill set to go beyond that. But let's not kid ourselves and say Debo is all of a sudden going to be this AJ Green type that's going to run out of bounds after making a catch or something like that.
What Coach Noah Johnson and I have talked about, Coach, he's clever, and we were talking about is basically what Pittsburgh does. Like, they draft a wide receiver in round 2 or round 3 every year, and they usually don't re-sign their wide receivers, and they're like, we'll develop them, and we'll keep drafting, and we'll let them go, and we'll figure that our Hall of Fame quarterback will make them look a little bit better, and they'll be replaceable. That's basically the idea here, is that you don't necessarily want to spend big money on wide receivers.
And the thing with Pittsburgh is usually when they let them walk, nobody says anything, because when you let Mike Wallace walk, you had Emmanuel Sanders and Antonio Brown. And when you let Emmanuel Sanders walk, you had Martavis Bryant. And when you let Martavis Bryant walk, you had Juju Smith-Schuster. So they've always had this running kind of thing. I think this is the first year where even if you don't re-sign Juju, I think people still be okay with Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. So I do think there's something to that. But I think when they got the star in Antonio Brown, they gave him the money. So we'll see if one of
it was a mistake. I wonder if they regret it too. Because Ryan Clark has talked about, like, he's like, give him this money, you're gonna create a monster.
Right.
It's not. We talked about that. Yeah, it's true. It'd be interesting to see if they could get Debo to be more than just, because again, they do use him as a running back, and you want to give someone who's used like a running back wide receiver money. No, he's gonna break down. But if you get a quarterback who's like closer to Ben Roethlisberger than Jimmy Garoppolo, all of a sudden, yes. That's the big thing.
Not this year, Ben.
That Pittsburgh figured out is like, yeah, man, you know what helps a wide receiver develop? A Hall of Fame quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
And a Hall of Fame quarterback who's the ultimate receiver-friendly quarterback in terms of standing in the pocket forever and willing to make any type of throw, right?
Yeah. Go do a triple move. Go run an out, up, and in and out, and then a post. And I'll wait for you, buddy. And so you have these like deep threats who run 4.55, like Antonio Brown. Anyway, I never felt he got enough credit for Antonio Brown's
no, 100%. I mean, he should have gotten more credit for Mike Wallace.
Agreed. All right, Vish. I think I'm gonna let you go. We're getting up on 2 hours. You're very generous to come on and
you got
give me
one
all
more
this time. Do I?
13, yeah.
Oh man, District 13. Oh my bad. Washington's Taylor Heineke, who was a free agent for cheap, gave Brady a harder time in the playoffs than Mahomes, getting paid $50 million a year.
Quarterback wins.
Hey, no, you're right. You're right. And the thing about Washington is that defense is crazy good. But Taylor Heineke competed his ass off in that game for nobody. I don't know who that guy is. So I'm not really interested in getting Taylor Heineke, but cool. I'm interested. I mean, I'm not writing him off. I like him for a backup.
He's got a little Baker to him, right? With the moxie, the confidence.
Yeah. And I felt like
I
felt like the Rams were kind of hoping that Wolford would have that kind of a effect. And Wolford got himself knocked out of that game in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And Heineke didn't. Give him credit. The dude competed and stayed in there.
Remember? He went and got himself taped up because they didn't have a quarterback behind him, and he came back and he was slinging it. It was a cool story, but I think that's all it is. I don't think it's
I think so too. I do think of the cool story guys in the NFL, he's interesting because compare him to a guy like Gardner Minshew, he can move. He can move a little bit for a little. That's cool. So I hope his where did he go to college, man? Who is he? Where do you get a name like that?
I know.
Who does he think he is?
He thinks he's like Gardner Minshew. That's who he thinks he is.
Pretty much. All right, man. Oh, Vish, that was great stuff. I'm going to let you go now. We've gotten a crazy amount of donations today.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Vish, I hope to go on your channel soon. Tell Blake I said what's up.
On soon for sure.
Yep. All right, man. Go have a good night. And I'll talk to you
too.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right, have a good one, man.